What's next? Oh, God. Sorry, that's my phone. It's really unprofessional. Yeah, let me just take that real quick. Hello? What? Justin?
Sheep.
Is that... No sheep, Justin.
Sheep.
No, Justin, we're not doing sheep.
But sheep, though.
Fine, we're doing it at your house.
Fine.
Sheep. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Golden Bolt. I'm not home right now, please leave a message. Alright everybody, please welcome my buddy Justin to the show. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is Justin. I'm originally from New York. My first game ever was Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on the Genesis. Ever since then, it kind of just spiraled into N64, PS2, Xbox 360, and here we are today.
Yeah, so about a year to a year and a half ago, Justin recommended that I play Catherine on the PS3. I think he played the 360 version.
I did.
But I don't have a 360 anymore, so I picked up the PS3 version. And a few weeks ago, I had another buddy who recommended that I play Catherine. So I decided, I might as well have Justin tag along with me. I know he really, really wanted to see me experience the game firsthand, so here we are. So what does the game even play like? I mean, I'm sure we've all heard of it with how popular it was when it first released in 2011, but, I know nothing about it, so let's go ahead and find out. Now, if any of you really know Atlus, you'll know that they're really tight-lipped about their development cycles.
All we really know is that it was developed by the Persona team. Development started around 2008, with the team hopping back and forth between finishing up Persona 4 and hammering down the basics of Catherine.
However, here's a nice little bonus for you. The game actually has different covers between the PS3 and the Xbox 360 versions, and some copies in the US also have a slightly zoomed-in cover to appeal to sensitive gamers that were offended by the, revealing image on the front cover. Okay, so before we even start, the story is the main draw of Catherine. This isn't so much a plot synopsis as it is my experience with the game here.
Most of the game is heavily scripted, and your choices won't make a huge difference, but the overall outcome will be affected by the choices that you make as you go through the game.
This story isn't as much a case of player choice as it is a case study on relationships as it comes through your eyes. The choices you make are based on questions asking you how you'd manage in the main character situation. There isn't one definitive playthrough of this game, and I'm not going to spoil the experience for you guys, only give mine.
We'll warn you when to skip ahead for spoilers, if you want to do so.
So oddly enough, Catherine's a frame story. It opens up with a monologue from this lady Trisha, also known as the Midnight Venus. She's the host of the Golden Playhouse television show, I guess? She informs us not only the fact that the choices we make will affect the plot, but also who we're going to be stepping into the life of for said plot.
Enter Vincent Brooks, a 32-year-old systems engineer. Vincent has coasted through his entire life without having to make major changes. Everything has been a constant thus far, including his 5-year relationship with his girlfriend, Catherine McBride. Catherine has a busy job at a clothing company, and the two meet regularly for lunch, as we see as the game truly opens up.
Vincent seems to be zoning out because he's been recently overworked at his brand new job. Not the best idea considering he's afraid of change, but whatever. And Catherine begins to scold him for leading a life of complacency.
She brings up another possible change, which terrifies Vincent as well. Marriage.
It's right around here that I have to note that Vincent is incredibly awkward and hilariously so. He has no clue how to react to anything, and his characterization is completely unfitting for somebody like Vincent's voice actor, Troy Baker. I can't imagine Joel or Booker DeWitt struggling through a basic conversation with his longtime girlfriend. It's just hard to believe. A few hours later, Vincent's at the Stray Sheep, a local bar where Vincent and his friends hang out. This acts as the main hub for the game. Two of his old high school friends, Orlando and Johnny, are trying to convince him that he'll hate marriage, while a third, younger friend, Toby, remarks hopelessly about how great it would be to find a soulmate. The bar's waitress and another high school friend of Vincent's, Erica, brings a woman's perspective in, telling Vincent,
raising a nice, happy family is supposed to be a good thing, right?
After the other three guys go home, Vincent is approached by a young woman, and before their conversation begins, we cut ahead to the bread and butter of the game, the nightmare sequences. Vincent wakes up in a dream, in only his underwear, walking towards the door surrounded by... sheep?
There they are! The sheep! In these nightmares, Vincent meets a cast of colorful characters, such as Sheep with a Tie, Sheep with Glasses, and my personal favorite, Sheep with Sunglasses. As Vincent wakes up...
Whoa, hold on. Here's the spoiler warning, guys. This is all we can give you for now if you're yet to play the game. Skip to this point in the video to get to the end of the story section, though the next few minutes are sort of soft spoilers. If you've heard about the game, you probably know about the stuff we're about to discuss, so we'll give one last spoiler warning later on.
Vincent wakes up to find this attractive young blonde woman in the bed next to him. Naturally, he freaks the hell out. Vincent has no idea who this woman is, but slowly it comes back to him. This is the lady from the night before. Yup, he cheated on his girlfriend. Booker for president!
Anyway, Vincent's horrified when he realizes what happened, but he's so incredibly awkward that he somehow gets tricked into leading her on. This is gonna be one of those stories, isn't it?
Oh, don't worry, it'll get weird.
The next day, Vincent is out at lunch with Orlando explaining a situation. At the same time, he overhears other people talking about a nightmare curse, similar to what he's been having, but nobody can quite remember these nightmares in detail. He goes to the stray sheep again, tells his friends about his affair, gets drunk, has another nightmare, and wakes up having again cheated on Catherine. He also finds out that his mistress is named Catherine as well.
Girlfriend Catherine is spelled with a K. Mistress Catherine is spelled with a C. That's very important, and we refer to them with those letters from here on out.
Later this day, which we will now call Day 3 to avoid confusion, at lunch, Vincent terribly hides the fact that he cheated on K. Catherine, and even more terribly responds when K. Catherine tells him that she's pregnant. K. Catherine has to tell him 3 times to say something because he's too busy sweating.
It's so hard to tell what you're thinking sometimes.
Try looking at his face, lady. He also gets a phone call from C. Catherine, which he even more terribly responds to. God, this guy. She happens to show up at the restaurant, and Vincent freaks out and runs to the bathroom to hide.
The next 4 days or so follow a recurring pattern, with Vincent trying to lead his double life while still getting wasted every night and continuing to accidentally cheat on K. Catherine with C. Catherine.
Can we even call this an accident anymore?
The nightmares get more plentiful for the bar patrons, and some of them even die if Vincent doesn't convince them to keep going by talking to them at every opportunity, both while awake and asleep.
For the sake of time, we're going to generalize days 3 through 7. Some plot important things happen, like Toby hitting on Erica, and the revelation that almost every person in the bar, Erica included, are having nightmares now, as well as some recurring themes such as ants, and what the fuck? But most of this should be saved for your own playthrough. This is where you should skip ahead. If you haven't played the game, jump ahead to the end of this section. I can't recommend that enough.
On the night of day 7, Vincent breaks off his affair with C. Catherine, explaining his relationship with K. Catherine, the pregnancy, everything. C. Catherine takes it really well. Oh, that's rough. On the morning of day 8, Vincent wakes up without a nightmare, without C. Catherine by his side, and surprisingly well rested.
K. Catherine shows up to talk, and Vincent goes to the door to greet her. Oh,
You just got caught, son!
Oh, crap. Yeah, it turns out that C. Catherine was in Vincent's house after all, trying to sabotage his relationship with K. Catherine. The 3 of them have a nice discussion over coffee.
You little whore!
And K. Catherine kills C. Catherine.
To be fair, it is self-defense. They try to get out of the room, and they realize it's part of the nightmare. Vincent guides K. Catherine away from the giant demonic C. Catherine, and then he wakes up to find K. Catherine staring at him.
He then freaks out again, trying to find C. Catherine hiding, and accidentally reveals his hand to K. Catherine. However, she already knew he was cheating and tells him that she's not actually pregnant. She thought she was, but it was a mistake that she then held onto for a few days to keep him from leaving her. She breaks it off, cue sad rain montage.
Man, what a f***ing dump.
And then he has an inspiring conversation with Orlando.
No. It's all gone.
What's wrong? You had a toilet paper in there? Oh, I got you.
Dude, it is seriously gone.
This is where Vincent notices that all traces of C. Catherine have vanished. It turns out that nobody else ever actually saw her. Vincent had imagined all of the interactions between her and the outside world.
Wait, so when Vincent freaked out in the restaurant because C. Catherine showed up, did that even matter? I mean, what did K. Catherine see? Vincent ends up in a bar later on in day 8, and the guys leave early, leaving Vincent alone. He then recalls that one other person acknowledged C. Catherine on day 1, and that the other person was the owner of the stray sheep, this white-coated Big Boss cosplayer. Vincent shakes the information out of the bartender, and he reveals that he's the person responsible for the nightmares. Pretty convenient that the big bad is at the same bar the entire time, but okay.
He reveals that C. Catherine is a succubus that changes her form to be the perfect match to whatever man she's trying to seduce. The reason the bartender, now revealed to be named Thomas Mutton, makes the nightmares is to destroy any unfruitful relationships that will not further the human race. The reason men like Vincent are targeted is because they're preventing their partners from procreating. Also, Mutton is a demon.
Vincent challenges Mutton to one last nightmare. If Mutton wins, Vincent dies and the cycle continues. But if Vincent wins, the nightmares stop completely, and Mutton arranges one last meeting between Vincent and Catherine.
Wait, you didn't say which Catherine?
That's where player choice comes in. Throughout the game, this meter pops up during conversations, email chains, or these randomized nightmare confession choices, which can get kind of weird at times. Depending on the player's response, it'll either shift towards blue or red. However, right here during the final day's nightmares, these confessionals no longer affect the meter. Instead, your choices affect which ending you get. There are 3 different base endings depending on these final confessional responses, with 3 variations of each ending depending on where the meter is on the final day. I'll only discuss my ending, which is coincidentally the one that we consider the most thematically appropriate.
We're not downplaying the other 2 endings, which are just as good as the ending that we got, but they don't exactly fit the tone of the game as well.
Vincent tackles the final challenge, defeating Mutton in their final showdown. Vincent then tells Mutton that human lives shouldn't hold the predestined path, and that you can't herd people like sheep. Mutton holds his end of the deal, and this is where the different endings come into play. In our ending, Vincent has Orlando text Kay Catherine to tell her to come to the bar to catch up, with Mutton going so far as picking her up and driving her there. Vincent explains that C. Catherine doesn't actually exist, and with the help of all of his friends and Mutton, convinces Kay Catherine to give him a second chance. She says she'll consider it, and we fade to black. Oh yeah, it's a frame story. Trisha explains the entire plot, tells us the meaning behind it, and essentially acts as Atlus's crutch to easily outright tell us what to understand.
She then explains the meaning behind the meter. Like Vincent's speech about how human life isn't binary, this meter isn't binary either. While red seems like bad the whole game, it actually stands for freedom and excitement, while blue stands for peace and order. Your choices throughout the game reflect how you would have handled the situation if you were in Vincent's position.
Well, mostly. I hope that nobody in this world is as awkward as Vincent. Anyway, here's where the true ending starts. Trisha takes us back into the story for an epilogue where Catherine and Vincent are newly married. We're taken right into the reception at the Stray Sheep.
Why is everybody else dressed normally? Weren't they just at a wedding?
Everyone's having fun, and we get closure on each friend's story as they've developed with Vincent.
Oh yeah, also Erica is revealed to have been born as Eric. Toby lost his V-card to a dude.
And that's it. Before I get back into a general non-spoiler wrap-up, I just want to say that I do have significant problems with Vincent's mannerisms, since this entire plot could have been avoided had Vincent just used words. He gets pushed into this path, and a lot of the plot feels like a plot of conveniences to me, especially at the end when Vincent is suddenly competent out of nowhere simply because he's fed up. I get that C. Catherine is literally built for Vincent's desires, but even if Vincent didn't immediately cheat, if he just said no to C. Catherine for one night and then the pregnancy set him off unintentionally, I feel that the plot would have benefited greatly. Instead, he's just a pushover and lets everything happen to him, essentially.
Coming from someone who's experienced a good deal more Atlus than Kevin, their stories tend to start out really slow. But Catherine sort of suffers from its quick start. Even pushing back the main plot another night to build the characters more, to give Vincent any reason to cheat, would have only helped the story. It's already not a long game. It can be beaten in about 10 hours easily. So breaking the Atlus trend of slow starts doesn't really work in Catherine's favor here.
The way it stands isn't bad by any means, but it could have felt more natural. If you skipped ahead, welcome back. Catherine's got an insanely charming story, even if the execution is a bit ham-fisted in terms of themes. The plot builds up really well and evenly, leading to a very large crescendo at the end. Some would argue that it's a plot dump, but the game is essentially all story anyway, so I don't consider it too much at least.
Considering how long you're kept in the dark, it feels entirely warranted. All the pieces fell perfectly into place all at once, and it legitimately blew my mind the first time through.
Plus, the game can actually make you think and question yourself if you really put your own stance into the confession questions. It's rare that a game makes you think back on yourself, not just on the game or on the characters. The only problems I have with the game are Vincent being incredibly inept at times, and the super fast pacing in the first couple days. We aren't given enough time to develop things early on, and reorganizing things even slightly would have helped greatly. Because of this one major flaw, I can't give the story a golden bowl.
But the story's the only thing it does!
That may be true, but if there's a significant issue that I develop immediately with the main character, not a side character, the main character, that's gotta be noted. For that reason, I'm gonna give the game's plot a silver bolt.
Fine.
Catherine's focused around 2 gameplay styles. There's the hub world of the Stray Sheep and the Nightmare world. In the bar, you can talk with your friends, send texts, look at interesting pictures from C. Catherine, and drink copious amounts of alcohol.
When you drink enough alcohol, you receive a passive speed bonus when you climb blocks in your nightmares. And you also can receive interesting facts about the 4 types of alcohol served in the game: a cocktail, beer, sake, and whiskey. There's also a huge distraction in the form of a Rapunzel arcade game. This game follows the gameplay style of the Nightmare sections, but focuses more on completing puzzles within a certain move limit instead of a time limit. There are over 100 levels of this for you to practice your climbing skills.
Speaking of blocks, let's talk about the nightmares for a little bit. While the plot mostly takes place during the day and at the bar, most of your time in the game is spent asleep. Exciting game, I know. You have to find your way to the top using many different strategies, a lot of which are taught to you by the sheep in the rest areas found between levels. While the game is tutorial heavy early on, within an hour almost any semblance of handholding is thrown out the window, and it's up to the player to figure out how to ascend. Sprinkled within these levels are also one-use power-ups, like the ability to create blocks, jump up 2 blocks at once, and kill all the enemies on the screen.
Yeah, there are also occasionally enemies in the levels, from other sheep that just get in your way, to bigger, crazier sheep that'll try and push you, to even crazier sheep that'll just kill you, and so on. The block types gradually expand, with ice blocks, black hole blocks, immovable blocks, weird tongue blocks, and so on, hindering your path to the top by the end of the game.
These sections often aren't much to write home about, honestly. They're enjoyable at times when the pace is slowed down, but that's only done a couple of times. In fact, there's only one level that was undoubtedly memorable as a puzzle level, because you're given time to figure it out, a clear goal, and a clear path to the goal so long as you figure it out. The rest of the time, you're forced to trek up these vertical labyrinths very quickly, with multiple paths to the end, and making simple mistakes can easily kill you. Even when playing on easy due to time constraints with recording and writing this review, I died a lot. Sometimes, obviously, it was my fault, but most of the time it was either due to the time crunch or to the controls. Here's the worst part of the game to me.
The controls leave much to be desired. No matter what way the camera is angled, the controls are relative to Vincent, not the player. Up is up, even if you're hanging from a block facing the camera, where normally you'd think to press down to pull yourself towards the block. It makes sense from a physical perspective when you say it out loud, but not when you're actually playing.
It's even worse the majority of the time when the camera doesn't cooperate. Most of the time you don't have to climb around to the back of the towers, but when you do it's infuriating because the camera at best only moves 90 degrees, giving you a side view of the whole level. And again, right is still right even when pressing right moves you down towards the camera. Yes, you do get used to it eventually, but even at the end of the game the problems linger. It feels like a PS1 game at times.
Especially during the boss fights where the controls suffer the most. The bosses appear at the final level of each of the nightmare sections, and they're personifications of whatever plot point Vincent currently fears the most. The bosses are unrelenting. If you're even slightly too slow when climbing, they will instantly kill you. Because of this, you try to climb as quickly as possible, which leads to even more mistakes because of the controls being so janky.
The bosses can be anything, from a baby with chainsaw arms, to a giant arm holding a fork, to what the hell is that?
Oh, that one's my favorite.
The fourth boss is by far the worst though, mainly because that knight introduces ice blocks, but also because the boss is easily the fastest in the game. Just pray that you don't make any mistakes on the ice or you will die a lot. At least when you die, there are checkpoints spaced out very well on almost every level. They're consistent in all the difficulties, and on every difficulty except for hard, there's an undo button to give players a break if they mess up or if the game's controls mess them up. Notice that I said almost every level. There is one level in the game where you're escorting a slow, computer-controlled K-Catherine through a level. She can easily get killed by simple hazards because you have to keep an eye on both you and her, and there aren't any checkpoints. At one point I failed because I was at the end of the level, but I left K-Catherine slightly too far behind, meaning I had to start the entire level again because reasons. These issues aside, the gameplay is not much to write home about. Because the levels are long marathons quite often, they're not immediately memorable as puzzles.
It's a means to the end. You'd replay Catherine to see what different endings you could get, not to replay the puzzles. If you want puzzles, Rapunzel is a much better choice.
If you do want a bigger dose of the climbing, you can play baaa, which is essentially a challenge mode with harder puzzles built for expert players, or you can go to the Colosseum, a 2-player mode. The game's full of content for players who do fall in love with the gameplay here, but it's not necessarily the kind of content that I would want. Both sections of the gameplay have minor flaws, such as the emails having a very unintuitive way of scrolling through text options. Instead of just scrolling through the options with the D-pad, you have to press circle to erase lines and X to cycle through the next option. Overall, it's an average at best gameplay experience. It's almost a Telltale game in this regard. You came for the story, and the gameplay's there to make it a game. I'll give it a silver bolt here as well.
This game has Atlus presentation through and through. It's beautiful no matter what, from the bright and lively daytime sections to the bleak and yet somehow charming nightmare segments. Each character has a unique visual flair, and you can't easily confuse any two characters. Each nightmare has its own theme, making the levels at least feel different, even if they're functionally the same.
Plus, there are anime cutscenes done by Studio 4 Degrees Celsius that are absolutely beautiful. They and Atlus seem to work perfectly together, with the 3D models meshing stunningly with the hand-drawn art here. The only game that's on the same level with combining 2D art and 3D models is probably Ni no Kuni. The lip-syncing is off no matter if you're watching the anime scenes or the in-game models, though. They didn't even try to match the English. But that's not a big deal because the voice acting is spot on. While I do have issues with Troy Baker portraying such a decidedly not Troy Baker character, his actual performance is fine. Great even. The cast is full of Atlus regulars and major voice actors alike, like Laura Bailey as C. Catherine, Knuckles the Echidna as Johnny, and it wouldn't be an Atlus game without Yuri Lowenthal. I will note that the sound mixing is pretty bad at times, especially when there are background noises involved. Whenever something like a slam happens during a cutscene, the voice volume is dropped down for several seconds afterwards. It's just kind of odd.
And then there's the music. You can tell the soundtrack here is made to be background music, and it functions very well at that. But it doesn't go further than that until the end of the game. There's only 1 or 2 songs that sound enjoyable enough to listen to again, particularly this one. There are also some really funny royalty-free mixes when you conquer an entire night, such as a really badly placed Hallelujah chorus. There's not really much to say on this front. Again, it's an Atlus game, and Atlus always tend to present their games exceptionally well. It looks great from start to finish, and while the music isn't much by itself, it's great for the experience here. For that reason, I'm going to give the presentation...
Hey, hold on, that's my line.
Oh, I'm sorry.
For that reason, I'm gonna
Gold Bolt. I really wanted to do it, you wouldn't let me.
Fine. If the game particularly grabs you, there's plenty more to do here. If you're discouraged by the fact that the game only took us 10 hours, don't be. You can easily play this game 3 full times just to get all the endings, and the higher difficulties change the level layout as well.
Plus, like we said before, there's Babel for anyone that's really up to the challenge, with some slight story bonuses for those especially invested in the lore.
All in all, you can easily get over 60 hours out of Catherine, but you can also easily do the game once through in 1 or 2 sittings if you want to binge it, making it a perfect weekend game. Plus, the game's extremely polished too, crashing only once for us on an original fat PS3 with no patches installed, and it was after running for 6 straight hours. The only negative point I have here is that they put maybe 1 or 2 too many themes, which slightly disjoints the plot. There's an essentially unresolved thread where Answer uses a plot device and then forgotten about halfway through. Like, why are they even there, really? All in all, I highly recommend you try out Catherine at least once, and that you do so genuinely. I sure as hell didn't expect a game with this for a cover to make me think about myself.
If you're interested in the concept behind Atlus games, but don't have the time to try out a 40+ hour game to do so, Catherine's a perfectly sized entry point for you.
Yes, the gameplay can get frustrating, but the story will keep you going no matter what. You can find the game for about $20 nowadays anywhere you go, so if you have an interest and a 7th gen console, you won't regret this purchase. So that's it for Catherine. It's a really solid experience. I came into it mostly blind, and I did love it. I mean, I had some problems with it, but it surprised me big time.
It's really a great game, and it's really a game that you can go back to on a weekend and just try and find out what else is hidden in that game, because there's so much content.
There's a ton of content.
And if you're looking into the Atlus library of games, I would definitely say check out this one first, because it's so easy to get into, and it's only 10 hours, so you're in and out, and you understand what you're getting into when you get into the Atlus library of games.
Yeah. So, with that all said, I'll see you guys next time. As always, thanks for watching.
And stay golden.
What do you mean by that?
Here.
Oh, fuck.
Do 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 do